Hey, so I'm on time, which is an odd thing for me. So just gonna wait 1 minute so that I'm not completely talking to myself. But my name is Brooke Rush, and I am here to teach you guys how to contour tonight. So couple things I want to talk about first. Number one, I'm not an expert. I am absolutely self-taught YouTube, self-taught makeup artist, but I've been a Seint artist since April of this year, and I can promise you it's one of the best things I've ever done. So, second thing I wanted to mention is that they chose the absolute perfect person for contouring, and that's because I'm a big-faced girl. I got a big old head with a big old face on it. So contouring is my very best friend in the whole wide world. I have been insecure about the size of my head, which is an odd thing to mention, and getting chosen to do contour is not helping that insecurity. However, I'm going to show you guys exactly how I make myself feel better about that every single day. And I'm coming to you flat Stanley style right now, which kind of makes me a little bit uncomfortable, right? So I have this blank palette here, and I want to create shadows. So when you are contouring, what you're doing is creating shadows. Believe it or not, the entire intention there is still to highlight. Now, what does that mean exactly? If I take something stark white and I put it next to something cream, it doesn't stick out as much as if I took that same piece of stark white paper, say, and put it next to something black. So the whole goal with creating that shadow is going to rest next to what you want to highlight, right? So contouring is basically reverse highlighting. So step one is learning the rule. And the rule to contouring is contour wherever you want to contour. So I know everybody says, oh, you contour around the perimeter of your face, and then you contour underneath your cheekbones, and you contour your nose, and you contour wherever you want to contour, whatever you want to kind of sink away to it's not the foreground, and what you want to bring forward. So what I mean by that is, again, someone like me with a Jay Leno chin and a 5 head is going to want to shrink those things down so that they look a little bit smaller. Somebody who has a smaller forehead may want to avoid contouring around the top of their face, because what you're going to do is actually create a smaller looking forehead. So keep in mind that when you see everybody doing contour all over their face, that may be just because for them, that's what they want to do. Those are the things they want to kind of shrink up a little bit. So let's go over, I'm going to go through just standard contouring, and you're lucky, again, because you got a big old canvas here, and so I can show you all of the areas that you may potentially want to contour, but that's what I want to remind you, potentially want to contour. So for me, I'm going to start with my forehead. So forehead, again, if you have a tall forehead, what we're looking to do here is create a shadow on the top so that it kind of sinks away what everybody else's eye is looking at. So what we're doing here is tricking the eye into thinking that my forehead is a little bit smaller than it actually is. And the reason I'm using a contour as opposed to a bronzer is that the coolness in these contours is intended to mimic a shadow. Just like if a building outside created a shadow, that's a cool toned shadow. The bronzers are warm, and they're meant to actually hit the higher points on your face where the sun would hit. So I'm using one called Ash. Ash is actually one of my absolute favorites. And if you have been color matched, usually it's one that will also work in other areas like your brow or things like that. Now, given that I'm an artist, I have all of the contours, and I'll tell you that they all see a lot of love for me because there's a bunch of different uses for them. But I'm going to start first. This is the we changed names, but it's the old detailed hack brush. So I love the top of this. So it is actually a pretty narrow brush, and it gives me the ability to kind of create some more precision-like lines that I start with, and then I'll go back and blend them after the fact. If anybody has questions, by the way, I'll read them afterwards and come back with the comments. I'm part of the old lady gang, and me being able to read while I'm doing this is just an impossibility because I do a lot of the stuff at this point. So Second thing that I'm going to tell you about forehead contour, and this is one of my favorite contouring tips. I'm not a naturally auburn-headed girl. I'm a naturally gray-haired girl. So this is one of my absolute best tips and tricks with our contour. It covers our grays like you would not believe, and it doesn't look cakey and gross in your hair. So I'm not at all careful as I hit my hairline, and you'll kind of start to see my roots that are growing out disappear and be camouflaged and kind of sunk back away from what you're picking out on my face. So again, for me, I'm shrinking this down. So I'm just going to take essentially the width of this brush and lightly add my contour. And then I'll go back in and blend it out with the back end of my blush and bronzer brush. But, all right, see the light hairs I have here? Watch them just melt away as I put in my contour. So they look way better once they have a little bit of coverage. So I'm just going to blend out. This is the back end of my blush and bronzer that I used to put on the rest of my highlight. Just going to blend it away a little bit, and it helps to just create the tiny bit of shadow that I need to kind of sink down the size of my forehead. So I will usually come around like I just did, and then I'm going to actually do two different techniques here for you. So it may look a little crazy in the end, but first technique, and this is our tried and true way. So I always tell people, find where the hollow of your cheek is. So the hollow of your cheek, if you suck in, is going to be directly under where you can feel your cheekbone here. Tip number 5,000 at this point. Make sure that when you are placing your contour, if that is where you are putting your contour, make sure that you're focusing it on the very top of that hollow. Essentially what I'm doing here, I'm not trying to make their attention be drawn to my contour. I'm actually trying to draw their eye to my cheekbone. And the lower I put my contour, the lower my cheekbone is going to look. So my whole goal is to kind of raise everything up. I'm not actually doing that. I'm tricking your eye into thinking it is. So I want to keep that contour line as high into that hollow as I can so that my cheekbone on the direct opposite of that is going to look as though it's a little bit raised. So I'm going all the way back to my hairline, and I'm not coming any further forward than basically right below the outer corner of my eye. And I stipple that on with that very same brush. And I'm going to go back in and blend it with my other brush. But so you can see that it gives me just a tiny bit of definition. And again, the goal with contouring on your cheekbones is to make your cheekbone look higher. So you want to keep it high enough in that little valley there. So I'm just going to go back in with the same brush, and I basically just kind of blend the edges of it so that it looks a little bit more natural. So that's kind of the old school. It's not old school. It's still plenty of people's schools, but that's the version that we all know and love. There is a second one that this may look odd, being that my face is going to be two different ways, but this is how I've been contouring lately. And this was, it at least is several mascara artists ago, so I'm not claiming this technique, but I will tell you, give this a try. So if you continue down around that contour that we put here, and instead of going underneath my cheekbone, I'm actually going to leave only about a finger width of space underneath my eye, and I'm going to put this contour directly onto my cheekbone, only leaving that little bit of space between the edge of my eye and the contour itself. So you see how much higher this is than this one was here. And it looks a little odd now till I blend it out. But again, just kind of stipple that in and don't take it any further than we did on the other side. And then give it a little bit of a blend. And see now how this side actually looks a lot higher than this side does. So something to give a try. And it took me a while to kind of figure out exactly what that placement was, but it really does make a big difference. And I think too that definitely different shapes of faces is going to affect which one of these contours looks better for you, which one really brings up your cheekbone. But that's what I want you to be looking for. Which one makes my cheekbone look the highest? And for me, it's this one. So just a thought, if you want to try that technique, it's super easy, and truly this detail brush, we'll call it, is the absolute best way to do it. So last place standard contouring is of course our jawline. So I'm 45 in a couple days, right? And one of the biggest things that's making me insane is my old lady waddle. So I have this little bit of fat pocket there. And so contouring underneath my chin has been an absolute godsend. And contouring with a cream has made the biggest difference in the world. So before I was trying to contour with, I was a big fan of Anastasia Beverly Hills, and I had her contour shaded, I think the contouring palette, and the powders would get patchy throughout the day. With the creams, they stay beautifully blended in, almost as though they melted into your skin. So the difference between how I put on this contour and the rest of my face is I'm big on using my finger. So I'm gonna pick up that same ash contour, and I'm gonna draw this from the point of my chin, and I'm just gonna bring it directly back under my jawbone, but I'm gonna make sure that I'm right at the edge. I don't want to breach the top, and I don't wanna go too far underneath, because I want the depth of this to really be right underneath here, as though it's an actual shadow. Again, we're shadow. So both sides. So that's all it takes. And then I'm gonna take my same detailer here and just blend it down my neck. One of the things I do also like to do, because I do like a sharp jawline. I like a sharp jawline because I feel like I have just kind of a big, I keep saying I have a big head. I have a big head, I have a big face, but everything seems very rounded to me. So I like to kind of put some focus on the one part of my face that does have a little bit of angular area to it, and that is my jaw. So I'll pick up a little bit of my highlight just on my finger and hit that back corner, one little spot right there, and then just give it a little bit of tap. And again, so I'm putting that right on the other side of that shadow, and it just helps to give me a little extra highlight so it's a little bit more prominent than it was. So a couple other things you can do with contour. Hopefully you noticed this eyebrow is done, this one is not. So embarrassed to come on with my eyebrows after the tutorial you guys just saw, because those are some phenomenal brows, and I am far past the age of phenomenal brows, I promise you. So I spent a lot of time filling them in. I would tell you, so the hotline brush, or the old hotline brush, is phenomenal, and it is meant for brows. I've become a huge fan of the multitasker for this. And the biggest tip I'll tell you about this brush, number one, it is my absolute favorite eyebrow brush of all time, even though that's not what it's really designed for. I take a tissue, so this is used with cream all the time. Take it, run it up, and pinch it into the most pointy, perfect edge. And it will give your eyebrows so much life. So I'm gonna pick up, usually I use my indigo contour. So I'm gonna use a little bit of indigo and just fill in my brow. I don't wanna pick up too much. So the creams for your brows, not only do they have a ton of color and they last all day, because they are a cream and are contours, hopefully you've noticed that this at this point. I have a lot of people that when they first get their contour, they think that it's dry or there's something wrong with theirs because it's harder to get out of the tin than the highlights are. It's actually made that way. So during the day, these will last as far as the color, but additionally, because it is a product that's a little bit more dense, it almost acts as a brow pomade as well. I'm a huge fan of the brow wax, but I usually don't use the wax when I'm using a cream brow. So I just kind of take and fill in. Now you guys know how to fill in brows, so just to give myself a little bit more of a face framing than what I started with. All right, so the other thing you can do with contour, if you're not already doing this, I already have a lip on, but I'm gonna take just whatever was kind of left here, and I'm going to, underneath my lower lip, I'm going to line it a little bit more to create a little bit fuller looking lip. And then I'm also going to take the back end of that detailer with the tiniest bit of product, so you can barely see that I picked anything up, and I'm just going to create the littlest shadow underneath my lower lip. So it's hard to pick up on, but it creates a shadow. And what would create a shadow? A bigger lip. So it gives the illusion that my lip kind of folds over enough that there's a shadow underneath. So trying to think of some other, I use our contours as eyeshadow at times. I use contour more than probably any other product we have in here. It is super versatile. And again, best friend, this hack brush, and certainly the multitasker, if you don't have it, it's what I use for my lips too, is an absolute must-have tool in your kit. So I hope that you guys learned something. I'll tell you what, one of the best parts about being invited to do something like this is that I get to learn a lot of things already. Allison, your color correcting stuff was incredible. And now I got to figure out how to get my brows as fluffy as I just saw. So coming up next, Doris. Doris is doing some mature skin tips, and believe me, I am tuning into that one too. And then one of my babies, Rachel, will be here after that, showing you guys how she can do a full face of makeup with her sponge. So hope you guys are learning things. Participate. I know there's prizes, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the comments. If you have any questions, I'll come back through and look at them. Have a great night.